Good morning, good evening. I'm Judith Cano, responsible for the Global Engagement Office at University of Deusto in Spain. Welcome all of you to the Higher Education Institution Summer Forum second session, using virtual exchange for international online collaboration by Ruhr-Universität Bochum in Germany. Our colleagues will bring to the table the innovative opportunities for the so-called internationalization at home, provided by the collaborative online international learning, COIL, in virtual classrooms. It is my pleasure to introduce you today's session's moderator, Dr. Cornelia Freitag, Director for International and Academic Affairs at Ruhr-University in Bochum, Germany, to whom I give the floor. Please, Cornelia.
Hello and welcome to the session on virtual exchange. This particular series, it's part of a whole series of presentations, not just by the University of Deusto, but by a university alliance that goes under the acronym UNIQ, meaning the University of Post-Industrial Cities. It consists next to the University of Deusto and Ruhr-Universität Bochum, about more in a minute. UNIQ includes also University of Rotterdam, which held a session on higher education in supervised settings yesterday, and the University College Cork, which will present their experiences with the Civic University tomorrow. And there are 4 more partners in UNIQ, namely universities in Zagreb, in Oulu in Finland, Liège in Belgium, and Istanbul. My name is, as you already heard, Cornelia Freitag, and I'm the Vice Rector for Academic and International Affairs at Ruhr-Universität Bochum. Could I have the first slide, please? So being Vice Rector is why I get to host this session on virtual exchange for international online collaboration. Virtual exchange, I really have to admit that I wince every time the term virtual exchange is used, because it seems to me to be kind of an oxymoron, that is a contradiction in itself, as we are all used to international exchange equaling students and staff traveling across borders, living abroad, doing an Erasmus exchange to get international experiences to become interculturally competent. To go abroad virtually seems kind of a letdown. But coming from a big, actually one of the biggest German universities in a post-industrial area, which reads working class, immigrant, super diverse, to give our students international experiences without forcing them to give up their apartments, cancel their jobs, and spend a lot of money on traveling seems like a good idea, with the digital tools becoming more sophisticated and internet coverage becoming quite widespread. Now, before we start telling you about our experiences with the obstacles we run into and the opportunities we found when using digital means, and before you get to ask questions about this, let me introduce my university and 4 colleagues from my university who have used virtual exchange in their teaching recently, and who have done this in very different settings with different scopes and in very different fields. And here are my colleagues, and I very much hope when they speak that you will see them. So I will not only mention their names, but I would ask them to say a sentence to appear on the screen. So the first speaker will be Dr. Victoria Niebel from the social sciences. Victoria, could you say a little bit about yourself? 2 sentences.
Yes, hello. I'm Victoria Niebel. I am a research associate at the chair of social theory and social psychology at the Department of Social Science.
Thanks, Victoria. The next speaker will be from Protestant theology, Professor Dr. Christian Frevel. Christian,
yes, Christian Frevel, hello, all together. My name is Christian Frevel, and I'm a professor of Hebrew Bible at the Catholic Theology faculty.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Okay. Now from the English department, and I'm quite sure that it's the English department, Dr. Martina Feiler. Martina, please.
So yes, I'm an associate professor in American Studies, and I teach courses specifically connected to media, literary studies, and cultural studies. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. And from East Asian Studies, Professor Dr. Sebastian Berzik.
Yeah, hello and good afternoon. My name is Sebastian Berzik. I'm with the Faculty of East Asian Studies, holding the chair for the International Political Economy of East Asia.
Hello, and just to give you a little bit of context for what is the frame of virtual exchange presented later, here's some words about Ruhr-Universität Bochum. And could I have the next slide, please? Now, founded about 60 years ago in the Ruhr area, and you can see that what is now our university used to be a lot of greenery. The Ruhr University was founded in a densely populated area. That was traditionally the center of German coal and steel production, and later, until about 15 years ago, a center of car and cell phone production, which all folded. Now, Ruhr University opened in 1965, and it was and has been part of a structural change in the area ever since. Over the last decade and a half, Ruhr University has become the largest employer in Bochum city. We have 5,800 employees, 2/3 of them scientists. Ruhr University is a research-intensive university. It's a comprehensive university. We teach the humanities, law, the social and natural sciences, engineering, medicine, and we train teachers. And we excel especially in IT security and chemistry, where Ruhr University scientists are in charge of large research clusters funded by the German Excellence Strategy. Now today, Ruhr University is one of Germany's 10 largest universities. We have slightly more than 43,000 students, more than half of them, far more than half of them, non-traditional students, that is students from families where neither father nor mother went to university. Currently, we have 5,900 international students, and one of our most important aims in learning and teaching is to raise this number, which brings me to the reason why we have joined the European University Initiative and why we started to look into virtual exchange. Ruhr University has a strong focus on non-traditional student success. We have a strong focus on digitization of learning and teaching, which came in very handy with COVID-19. And we have the focus on research-oriented and research-based learning and teaching. And how this filters into teaching that uses virtual exchange will now be explained by my colleagues, starting with Victoria Niebel. So could we have the next slide, and Victoria, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I will give you a brief insight into our teaching project that we have developed at the Faculty of Social Science, and that is embedded into a transnational network of universities in Georgia, Ukraine, Austria, Germany, and Russia, called the INU, Internationale digitale Netzwerkuniversität. And that was initiated by the Goethe Institute in Eastern Europe. And the goal of the network is to facilitate intercultural exchange between the students of the partner institutions, and additionally to foster German as a foreign language. And our e-learning seminar, well, I will focus on it now, is thematically focused on concepts of inter- and transculturality and intercultural competence. And it brings together social science students at our department with international students that attend the course through the network I mentioned before. And yeah, you can see the interface of our learning platform on the right side of the slide. So yeah, the core of the seminar is the communication between the students based on their reflections on themes such as globalization and cultural meanings and understandings, and yeah, how this phenomena intertwine with perceptions of a good life, including their own perceptions and perspectives. So also the aspect of of the communication between the students that live in different countries is really interesting on this point. And in the last semesters, mainly students from Russia and Ukraine, as well as from other German universities, attended the seminar. Especially the collaboration with a group of students from the Higher School of Economics in Moscow has been intensified since we started the project. And since it started in 2018, we have included and modified different tools and methods based on the feedback of our participants. So the feedback for us is very important also to augment the course. For example, throughout the last year, we have diversified the seminar script that was written by Professor Jürgen Straub and me, and that structures the different section of the course. And yeah, we created a version that is more accessible to German learners. So based on the script, respectively, the modified version of the script, the participants mainly discuss aspects of the course with each other through the discussion board on Moodle. That makes it possible to attend the course asynchronously, which has been a feature of the course that was well evaluated from the beginning, as the students appreciated the flexibility in which they could attend the course. That mode also fits for students that are German learners and want to improve their writing skills and therefore also need time. And also the integration of the course into individual schedules throughout the network, so in different universities, is very feasible when the major part of the course works asynchronously. Yeah, maybe we will speak about it later on. Yeah, but of course, a seminar centered on intercultural exchange would remain somehow synthetically without the possibility to communicate on a more direct level. Therefore, we included audio conferences and video conferences, starting with the last semester. And you can see on the right side of the bottom of the slide, for example, students in Moscow that attended an audio conference in January of this year. And yeah, on the left side, you see the attendance of a video conference during the semester or the summer semester. So yeah, due to the restrictions linked to COVID-19, we rethought some aspects of the seminar again, and yeah, added more video conferences and also included some new forms or some methods, for example, groups where 4 people work together and yeah, work on examples yeah, regarding intercultural differences or yeah, difficult aspects of communication. And yeah, so this is what I can present right now, and I'm glad to answer some questions later on.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. We will organize it so that we collect the questions and ask them after everybody has done her or his presentation. And I just wanted to ask one question again about the language, because I think this is something special. Mm-hmm. So the language of the whole course is German.
Yes, it is. It is okay. German. So the persons who attend from other universities out of other countries are German learners. Yeah.
And this was something that you thought about a lot from the very start, or?
I think at the very start, well, we are social scientists, so it went on a more interdisciplinary level later on. So we collaborated a lot with German teachers and lecturers from Moscow, who also added tasks for the German learners that go along with the modified version of the script. So at the beginning, we thought it would be easier. So we wrote a script that is for beginners, or it's an introduction into the field, but we thought it would be easier for German learners. So we have learned that we had to change some aspects of the text regarding the variation of vocabulary and the construction of sentences.
I accompanied part of the project, and I think that you also learned something about teaching and teaching to speakers whose mother tongue is not the native, your native language. And variation, you already said this, that of course, when we write text, the idea is you never repeat a verb over half a page or so. But for learners, this is of course helpful. So you had to throw in some repetitions that you had taken out before. Okay, maybe we can come back to this, but we will move on to a different field, Catholic theology with Christian, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to introduce to you this project of learning with the University of Pretoria. Both universities are settled in an urban area in Gauteng province, almost the same figure of students, 40,000 in a large urban area. And the project was oriented to two large compulsory course of basic teaching in the two studies, in theology, in history of ancient Israel. And that's a compulsory course for all students. And so the courses were about 40 to 80 students in both lines. And we thought that it would be a good idea to take the best students for research-oriented experience with the two professors, and with particular questions on the discussion in the academic field of historical studies. And we took David as the exemplar or the paradigm for this project. And then we selected a group of small students for this research-oriented teaching or learning. And we had first two asynchronous phases in which the students worked for themselves and organized themselves in reading texts, which we provided by the internet, in two sections, in South Africa on the one hand and in Bochum on the other hand. And they prepared with written topics in short introductions into the research questions to introduce themselves to the questions which was raised in the literature. And this individual group preparation then brought two online phases. One of the students of South Africa with me as professor, and they asked me questions how I evaluate the academic discussion and how I decide various questions on the inscriptions on David, for instance, or on the borders of his reign in ancient Israel, and so on. And we discussed several hours with the students, and the same the other way around of the German students, about 10 German students with the South African professor. And then we had a discussion on the students themselves in synchronous third phase, that they exchanged their experience with the questions we raised and the discussions, and that they reported from their own learning experience, from the pace and the settings of the learning. And this was, the idea was to bring together the best students of both courses and to confront or to introduce them into a research-based setting and to interest them for the questions of the research in theology. And the particularity was that they were from different denominations and from different fields of experience. In South Africa, it's the Dutch Reformed Church, and it were black, colored, and white students from the urban and the rural area. And here it was second level teaching students and some pastors from the Catholic theology. And the field of experience they discussed was as well their experience in their modern day questions of history and leadership and so on. And on the other hand, on the historical questions raised at hand. The advantages were that we thought that research questions have different contextualizations in this experience by the setting of the students, and their question they brought into the discussions were completely different from the South African horizon of leadership and the political discussion at hand some years ago. And the elections they had a different view or a different take on the questions than the German students, which were much more research on the research questions we raised in advance. And the different levels of competence was brought in by the different course levels. It was the beginning of the course of the students in South Africa, at the end of the course of the German students, due to the asynchronous semester times. And this was a little problem in discussion that, just look at the chat there. I shall switch off.
No, now it's fine.
Now it's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
We had difficulties understanding, and we thought that the connection was bad, but it came
which
back.
part you missed? I hope not too much.
Yeah, it was only the last sentences.
Okay. The opportunities I wanted to add to this project were that we built long-term relations for the teaching staff on the one hand, and the students on the other hand, that the questions we raised in several discussions.
Sorry,
after.
Sorry, it's again hard to hear. Maybe you could switch off the camera so that you are better, you have more power for speaking. Could you just stay? Yeah, but you should still speak. It's not about speaking, it's about listening. Oh, I'm sorry. Now we've lost Christian. Professor Prefel, could you please switch on your audio again?
Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Now you are back.
It was on all the time, but I'll try again to go ahead with the opportunities of the project to enhance long-term relations between the teaching staff on the one hand and the students on the other hand, and that questions echoed several times after the actual meeting. And what was the most threatening experience, that contextualization of questions in comparable urban areas and comparable setting of students were very different. and that the exchange between students opened their mind for internationalization on the one hand, for an international setting of questions, and the different situations reflecting, for instance, historical questions. It was the opportunity to raise open questions in these discussions and to relate them to current political discussions, and to make clear that they depend in various ways on the own setting of the students and their learning situation. We tried to implement methods on the same level, and again, methods to introduce the students to methodological discussions and learning. And that was a great experience, that it worked out on both sides with the same methods in various contexts. So that for the first time, I hope that not too much was missed of my talk.
Yeah,
if you have
thank
questions, you can ask later on.
Right, thank you very much. And most of it was really audible. It was just this little gap in the audio transmission. What you said about opportunities was very much, I think, the view of you as a professor. Could you tell us quickly what the students liked particularly about the course? I'm sure you did some evaluation.
Yes, they like to have a touch on the present academic questions on the one hand, and on the other hand, to have these two professors discussing their questions they have for several hours, and in a private context, sitting on the floor, and with the technical challenges we had, okay, but to discuss the reality of both sides in the different contexts, and to learn from the different perspectives how the professors evaluate the situation on both sides.
Right, yeah. So, and that of course is very interesting, because also my own students, normally they get my opinion and that is what they take for granted, but to also get something different, different grasps on methodology or content is just very, very exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you very much. And again, a very different project was what Martina Feiler embarked upon with her course. And Martina happens to be also from the same field. I come from American Studies. So the floor is yours, Martina.
Thanks so much for having me. What I'd like to bring to the virtual turntables here is a project that I've just conducted in the last winter semester. And it's part of a course that I titled Text as Right, Digital Textualities, which sounds very avant-garde-ish. I'm trying to introduce students to how they actually can read these virtual spaces and navigate their ways through them. And my colleague at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh, however, has a course. He designed a course that was already ongoing by the time we merged with his class, that was on the Great Depression. And it still worked out beautifully, because we could do something that the internet provides us with, and that is basically archival work. And so we also saw that somewhat metaphorically as a digital ride into the past. And that worked out really well, even though one could say that the undergrad students were a little bit younger, sometimes only 22 years old, versus my MEd students that were just about to graduate were, sometimes 29. But they were all extremely engaged in this particular kind of project that went on for a few weeks, as you can see here on the slide. And as in previous semesters, and I've done similar exchanges with him before, that's a professor of English at the University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. The kind of first point of entry into getting students together really came through a very basic welcome letter, in which we very clearly spelled out our expectations, what we thought could open up doors to each other in a world that is still, an ocean apart. So this kind of research background that we shared, we felt was a good gateway for students to also see what we're doing. I should also maybe add, and it has been mentioned previously in terms of university size, the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh holds about 14,000 students, so it's smaller. On the other hand, we also felt somewhat at home because time and again, students kept referring back to German immigration, to a past that they also were mildly aware of, and that brought other historical perspectives into their conversations. What I've noticed, and it's also here again on the slide, is that the discursive shifts as soon as you're creating these intercultural spaces is what also affects the learning outcome. So to be able to observe not only, let's say, a PDF file that they retrieve from one of those digital databases, but also to see the research path that they were on as documented in digital portfolios was a very fruitful experience for me to observe how students, at one point are stuck and then they bring in another idea, another observation, and this dialogue was very active. It's a new genre that I felt emerges that is very different from just writing one essay that one single mind produces. So there was a lot of work involved in these research-based exchanges, but we also left room for a personal kind of introduction for WhatsApp messages that could be exchanged also on their current situations, and that also I feel is one threshold moment for German students and also for American students to realize that we're all global citizens in some form. So there is definitely a gain in that kind of experience that's not just Facebook, but that's connected to their academic backgrounds, things that they are interested in academically. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, we used a number of digital tools, but these are compared to what I'm using currently, less tech savvy. For instance, we didn't necessarily use discussion boards in Moodle. Students very vividly and very engaged wrote emails to each other, long interpretations of posters that they found that they then in individual classroom presentations could also show the rest of the group, so to say. And on the other hand, it was also innovative because, for example, one of the students reported that she had suffered from morning sickness and she couldn't do the presentation. So instead of doing that for a Friday class at 10 a.m., we also agreed, would you like to bring in an MP3 file that we can just share and listen to? So I feel like, we're pushing it constantly with what's possible and what's still productive, but it sets the base for maybe what the future could bring, as I'm definitely going to repeat a similar course just next summer semester with my colleague, Don Dingeldine again. And we all, again, owe each other's cooperations to the other person that's also navigating their own students throughout these new trajectories of doing digital research and exchanging ideas on material, poems that they found, articles that they found, that they shared. So I think that's about it. I could also share some of those results maybe in the Q&A, but that's my experience with this kind of international electronic exchange.
Yeah, thank you very much, Martina. Very interesting. I was wondering, it seems to me that you brought in two new things, because in American studies, we all know that the United States is a very young country. So archival work is not necessarily what students in American studies expect to do. Now you brought in archival work and then you threw in students from very different contexts. So did you find that this was a lucky combination, or did you have second thoughts?
I never had any second thoughts because I was very much impressed by the academic approaches. Methodologically, it was a good fit. And the level of engagement and also the way, the helping each other aspect, clarifying, digging deeper into some historical aspects, but also doing what we also always do, and that is textual analysis. So it's an honor seminar, very, productive in bringing in their analytic angles, and that was a perfect match for the MA and MEd students that we have. We have a good program also, and I think it worked out. It has also worked out in previous situations with the same professor, maybe his group of students that he also nurtures, and so it wasn't necessarily a complete, disadvantage or some kind of disproportionate work that somebody put in and the other person wouldn't be as engaged because of a lack of competences or something. They all did really well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and you might realize that we try to bring in very different examples. An introductory course that uses German and is also good for the benefit of German learners, and now the second research-based course, but here not the same kind of courses that are method-bound, but two very different courses in which the students were brought together on their way to the learning outcomes. Another approach, very focused approach, will be presented by Sebastian Börsig. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is the slides. Yeah. Well, you see the flag of the European Union, and this is because this project became integrated in the Germany chair that I received in 2017. Before that, I had already started to cooperate with colleagues at the University of Malaya, the Asia-Europe Institute there. When I came back from Asia in 2015, started working at the Ruhr-University, I established this virtual exchange, which then developed further by integrating it into the Germany world, meaning that there is luckily the Asia-Europe Institute in Kuala Lumpur was also able to establish a Germany net cluster. And because of this Germany cluster or cluster of excellence, we were also able to attract more students. Those students in Malaysia, they do their a master in regional integration studies, which is something that I'm dealing with as well. That is the regional integration processes in East Asia with a particular focus on China. However, my specialty is relations between the European Union and East Asia. So here a couple of interests of mine and also of my colleagues in Malaysia came together. And this is something I think that is quite important here. We started with very limited resources, and it's still small. However, the feedback that we receive from students is very positive, and that is because this virtual classroom is very much about debate, conversation, discourse. We really want the students to have a conversation, especially because the topics that we deal with are very current, imminent topics. The course is called regionalism and interregionalism in theory and practice, and that is related to actors, obviously, and here China looms large. However, since the class is made out of largely students from Malaysia and students from Germany, there are other international students as well who participate. we are able to not focus on those huge actors, but also look at, for instance, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations of ASEAN, which is a kind of which is an actor that students in Malaysia are very much interested in, especially those at the Asia Europe Institute. So all of the students are to give a presentation, and the students are it's up to them to select, to choose a topic. This is a very this takes a lot of coordination to finally arrive at an agenda that allows the interests of the students in Malaysia and the students in Germany to have an agenda that fits their interests. Usually students in Malaysia are interested in integration processes in the European Union, and those here in Germany are more interested in those processes in East Asia. However, the method that we try to apply, in other words, that we want students to make use of, that is also a comparative approach. So I think here this is very, very useful. Obviously, it's linked to the big question, the role of the European Union as an international actor, and here the discussions that we are having are really very, very fruitful. Again, this is only possible because colleagues in Malaysia at also have an interest in this. So we cooperate when it comes to the grading. For instance, this is and these are all very rewarding experiences. Also because students have the opportunity to discuss and to work together amongst themselves, both coming from those two different continents. We encourage them to co-author or co-present a paper, a presentation. That is quite a challenging effort. However, when it comes to feedback, students are very engaged, and it's not only in terms of content, but also in terms of different theoretical approaches. For instance, a theory or an approach like post-colonialism might not be first choice, or let's say a regular choice in a European context. However, this is these different views and belief systems interpretations are far more used in, for instance, in Malaysia. So we can benefit all from different theoretical interests and the results. It is planned to extend this cooperation to Korea University in Seoul and also Fudan University in Shanghai. There are some practical questions here. That's, for instance, the time zone. This is the time zone because we have to, students have to get up early or get up late, go to bed late if we don't take this into consideration. So far we have used a software that is a video software that is called PACSIP that the Ruhr University had licensed. Now because of Corona, obviously the whole virtual exchange has become far more natural, and we're Zooming. So when we have this class again in winter, we in the winter semester we will make use of Zoom, and I think that this will also help us to well, continue.
Thank you very much. Again, very interesting. And this time, I think, if you compare all the different projects shown here or presented here, it seems that the matter of discussion, that is the content of the course, and the way to go about it, namely transnationally, are very, very closely related. Mm-hmm. Yeah? But we've also seen that this is not necessarily have to be so. I mean, the obvious question you have to answer is, who was Jean Monnet? If you
well, the father, so to speak, the father of the European Union, of the idea that you pool national sovereignty, that in order to develop a political system that overcomes national interests in ways that you do not fear your neighbor anymore, and this is what makes him an outstanding person. He wasn't a politician, but he was the one behind, the person behind Robert Schuman, whose coal and steel community has, well, made history, and Jean Monnet was not the woman, but the man behind him in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. And I think we will now switch to a discussion. And I want to encourage everyone listening and watching to ask questions, which I'm sure everyone will be happy to share. So could we have the presentation done away with? Could you please? Yeah, thank you. So that we see each other again, and you can see all of us, so that we might enter into a discussion. And before I start asking questions from the audience, I would ask something that was touched upon a little by our last presenter, namely what tools you have used. And I think everyone, because you come from my university, from our university, has used Moodle in one way or the other. So was this easy to do? Because I'm sure not every other university you dealt with was also using Moodle. So what were your experiences with Moodle and with bringing in other students to use Moodle? Yeah, whoever wants to answer, please do. Or was it just a perfect tool? I'd be happy, but.
Well, let me start then. I think it's a very useful tool. It works. Students could easily register, that is students at and we uploaded the literature. This is what Moodle is about, and there are also those chat rooms, so students could then also interact individually, bilaterally, whatever, within a group, collectively. So this, without Moodle, you would need another tool, because otherwise you can't you cannot have a academic exchange, right? I mean, in the sense of discourse. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Martina, did you have to unmute yourself?
Here we go. As we were basically working one-on-one, it was just easier for students to use other resources, including WhatsApp, including email, but also for exchanging documents, etc. And that, because it was compiled later, really, showed some exchange that I sometimes get tired of seeing in discussion boards on Moodle from the current experiences. You can put them into groups. We would have probably used that more, if COVID had happened, maybe the only positive aspect in that respect, because now I'm integrating it more. At the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, they used what's called Desire to Learn. They didn't use Moodle, but that was their platform. But what we also clearly did was, that is, at least in terms of exchanging material, the professor in the States and we had access to each of our spaces. So he could also see our digital portfolios, etc. We also, exchanged zip folders and material in that form much more conveniently for kind of data transfer, but that's what we have been doing.
Yeah, so obviously nobody is forced to stay to this one tool that is given by the university, but then you have to find something that is really working, and some tools lend themselves more to academic work than others. So I've got a couple questions here, and one is, what kind of advice would you give to an emerging researcher? How do you get started this collaboration in the field of teaching and learning? So yeah, obviously, or I guess it's not immediately what Sebastian Bursig explained, that is a funded collaboration. But so what would you suggest? What would be your suggestion to emerging researchers?
Yeah, if I may, just to add on your own experience in research and the internationalization or the international context you have, and then to build up on that in a personal communication with the other side, and to introduce first small groups of students, and just to do it in a way, and to have I would say common interests in research areas. That is very makes it very easy to cooperate with regard to students and to exchange the different perspectives of the teaching persons. I learned very much from the teaching situation in South Africa and the personal experience I had in confronting myself with the questions of the students there. And I would rather recommend to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think something that came out in all 4 presentations was that you need a reliable teaching partner. So somebody who you know well, whom you trust, who you know has kind of the same or comparable ideas, how to teach, what to do, how to do research, to then really get something started. And I think so the partner, I think, in these projects is always of crucial importance. And then you can do everything, basically. You just have to come up with ideas. And I mean, as I already said, some of what we presented here is funded, but what Christian and Martina have been doing was not extra funded, and it came out of cooperation, and it turned out to be very interesting and worthwhile. And I think the research component very, very often, if it's not specifically geared, for instance, to language teaching or to an introduction, to do research and to do collaborative research in mixed national teams, student teams, that will always give this extra intercultural experience that is very intense, even if you are not in the same country, in the same town. Here comes another question. And that's the question that I also put down before we even started, because I think everybody is puzzled by this. What criteria do you use to evaluate this experience of international online collaboration? So how do you evaluate this? Can you evaluate it? We just put in a bid into the German Academic Exchange Council to do more research on the question how to evaluate international experience. So any comments, any ideas? What did you do? I guess you did evaluate somehow. Victoria, would you like?
So, well, we evaluate on different levels. So, for example, we have a survey which evaluates all the seminars and is very standardized, which is good. But of course, I think that something which is very, basic for evaluation is the experience the students made during the seminar. So for me, one very important part of evaluation is a discussion at the end of the seminar and other discussions during the seminar to see if different forms of, if different methods work good for them. If, well, right now, for example, with the whole new situation, so it could be that they maybe have too much to do in a very short period of time. Or, for example, yeah, the video sessions, do they work out? Do they do they feel free to speak into this, this weird room? It can be for people who are not experienced very much into this kind of video sessions. So for me, it's this. It's based on the experience of the students, and of course also how they react and interact with the content of the course, and if they start to reflect what we write in the script, if they also discuss with each other the different aspects. So I think it's both on the one hand to evaluate if the methods of the seminar work out, and on the other hand, if the experiences and the exchange between the students gets to a level in which certainties are irritated and new perspectives are implemented into ways of seeing the world and evaluating processes and phenomena.
Right. Yeah, it seems that quantitatively is really almost ludicrous to try to measure what intercultural competences or what measure of intercultural competences one gained after one course. But of course, we do want to find out, and we do want to find out, Sebastian Bursig, whether you're talking about transnational attitudes and post-colonial methods have helped. So do you have any suggestion how to measure the gain, the intercultural competence gain?
Well, I think that Victoria nailed it already. It's qualitative measures that we need to apply here. I think that you really need a. This is why I emphasize discourse and debate. You really need to also get a good feel for the atmosphere. I would even call it rapport, which is kind of a bit steep, since there is a digital veil here. But you call it intercultural, yes, but that means a lot in these days, because we also have political issues. Political issues that are getting more and more tense between what are now usually called the world powers. So when we discuss domestic politics and international relations, economic affairs, you might even touch topics that are considered to be relevant to national security. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly you move into uncharted territory. So one has to be very alert and aware of those of this political environment as well, which is obviously also linked to intercultural aspects. So, but how to measure this? Well, in the discussion afterwards, right? When you talk to with your students, when they realize how the difference between approaches by students from the Asian side. Personally, I think a big step forward has then been made when you, after all, realize that there are also many aspects that all share, right? That we have in common, instead of focusing on those obvious differences. So this is a game somehow, a game that can't be lost, by the way. Mm-hmm. And there's also much responsibility around, because you can make, because in order to win, you need to set the environment accordingly. Mm.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. I think it also comes down to getting out of your comfort zone and understand very much that others also have comfort zones, and when they clash, that's nothing that, if you do this in discourse, it's nothing that goes wrong, but it's necessary, and you can work this out and you can work through this. And I think these are really interesting moments in these kinds of courses. Somebody is asking,
just to add one practical aspect, in addition to the usual form to evaluate the endeavor we made, we encouraged the students to evaluate themselves and not to rate them in terms of the course, but to reflect upon the experience they made in a written form. And that was very helpful and forthcoming.
Right. So that comes down again to the fact that there is very little value in having a scale from 1 to 5 and then have them do this and rate the course, but it needs to be reflective. It needs to be self-reflective and reflective with regard to the methods used. A question that was raised was whether any of you also ever thought about doing these programs face-to-face. Or do you feel that the participants preferred? And of course, the courses that we introduced were, I think, almost all, except Victoria's, were done before COVID-19. So this was voluntarily. And so the question is really, do you think that the people preferred to keep it in the virtual space? Or what were the reasons to do this virtually?
We do both. We had teaching experience on a personal level. When I traveled to South Africa to Pretoria, and the Praetorian professor came to Germany by DAAD funding, and he did some courses in Bochum as well. So we exchanged also the teaching stuff.
Right, right. Somebody else who wants to comment?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm not sure. I think most of the students, if you gave them the possibility to have an exchange face-to-face without having to spend a lot of money on it and to organize their life around it, I think most of them would be glad to have this opportunity. But facing reality, I think that this kind of courses are very interesting and giving a lot of opportunities to many who would not have this possibility to make it face to face. So, for example, also one thing I never thought about before working with students in Russia is the military service that affects a lot of the young male students. So some of them are in the course and could not leave the country, for example, right in this semester. And so you have yeah, you give them, for example, an opportunity to make this exchange and to attend this course, which would not be possible to make it face to face. Or another aspect would be in our collaboration also the possibility to interact with students from other countries like Ukraine and Georgia. So here the aspect of digitalization is crucial to to provide the possibilities of the exchange.
Right. So sometimes you really can cross political borders that are very, very hard to be crossed. And also, again, COVID-19, I mean, that showed that sometimes virtual exchange is better than no exchange at all. Sebastian, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking of the aspect of sustainability here in terms of networks. I think what we chance is obviously an opportunity is that students will remain in contact, that they will form bonds, that they will that they won't forget, and that won't erode. And that is usually something, at least in pre-pandemic times, this was always related to physical face-to-face contacts.
Right.
And I believe in that this holds true for a post-pandemic or for a pandemic world as well. However, obviously, question is it possible? Is it feasible? Not for financial means. Usually it was financial means. And so I would, nevertheless, I think the question is whether it's financially possible because in the end, this is very important to enable students to also meet face-to-face once. In earlier experiences that I made with students from South Korea, Japan, and People's Republic of China, showed me that this is very crucial. Right? They meet, they come together for 2-3 very intense days. And that will then hopefully, in the end, mean that even after years, they will remember. In that context, it's about reconciliation very much, history, World War II, but it's so important for contemporary affairs as well, as we see and watch and realize when we watch the news. So this networking and sustainability aspect, I think, is something that we miss out a bit if we merely were to focus on virtual exchange. It is different. There are different functions involved here as well, but we can push it even further. We can move up the value chain in a way. We can make use virtual exchange as a kind of instrument to allow us in the first place to establish this kind of student communities that we then make even stronger by having a physical exchange as well. But
yeah,
many caveats here.
I absolutely agree, and that was something that at least my rectorate has always seen in digitization in learning and teaching, that it gives us a chance to introduce students who would not have the means or would not make the effort to get out and get international experience, but they would get started, and that might start them on the path to go out and try and see the people in person, meet them in person that they have met only online. And I think, Martina, that was happening with one of your courses.
Exactly. One of my students had basically a semester in the States, not in Wisconsin, but she then decided to visit her partner and also the professor, and that, I mean, is a continuation of friendship by now. I've also exchanged emails with students personally, so to say, and if they were ever to come to the RUP for whatever project, I would also be happy to just show them our campus and show them around. And I would just love to have them. it's a matter of organizing April, May, because they graduate already in May. A summer semester might be the nicer period. Maybe October is also a good season to just visit the Ruhr region here. But yes, all these, social bondings can go on. That there is a continuation that's possible beyond our digital spheres, but they are also changing and evolving. And I think in the future, the kind of format we are having now, conversing with people in Spain, we can also make use of these virtual spaces in a more productive way, an international kind of way to exchange viewpoints. So, but I mean, from my own experience as somebody who has always gone on exchanges throughout my studies and later, that's how you encounter life. You have to see it. You have to see people also in person.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everyone here agrees that a virtual exchange never is to replace the benefits of physical exchange, but you can really combine them very, very neatly. And you can use the one to instigate the other and then also continue. And I think this is also why we all are usually, and we have a digitization strategy in our university where I think one of the first sentences is that we do not want to go to only virtual teaching, but that we want blended learning and teaching. So a connection, and normally virtual teaching, that is virtual exchange, should support the other exchange, and they should blend with each other. On the other hand, again, in a situation under which we are at the moment, it's helpful if you can also do a great deal of teaching in virtual ways. There was one last question that I still see, namely that the question whether you, when you go, and I think that is probably also a question that might remind you of what you did in April, when everybody had to change quickly from the courses that were normally planned to courses that are now online. So did you change the length of teaching? So do you something to verify? Because I think one of you already mentioned, I think it was Victoria, that there is some fatigue if it goes on too long. So do you adapt what you normally are doing to this online medium? Maybe Victoria, you could say some more. Mm-hmm.
So I have to admit that we had three Zoom meetings, and at that point I did not thought about the length of the sessions, and also the tools like the breaking session where you can go and work in smaller groups.
Breakout rooms.
That was something that I explored very late this semester, and is something that I will definitely implement more in the next semester. So I think that this is something that was also very, very new for me. I think something that worked out very good in our course is that we have flexible time periods in which the students can work on the tasks in the discussion board. So some students can finish the course in, I don't know, in 10 weeks, and other finish them in 14 weeks. So this is very flexible, and something the students evaluated as good and as very feasible with their life and other seminars.
Yes, and this question of synchronicity came up when we talked before this session, and that it makes teaching more flexible. So I don't know, Christian, would you like to say something about it? I think you brought it up.
Yes, it's the same experience that you need very much flexibility in time slots to introduce, to let the students introduce themselves and to present their questions and to wait a certain time until discussion comes up. And with a fixed time slot, it's sometimes difficult to fix discussions at a certain point. So our online sessions were completely open-ended, and we ended when the questions ended. But the agreement was that the reading was very limited in a fixed time period. So.
Yeah, and I think if you work with small groups, that's really a great advantage that you're getting. Mm-hmm. Well, talking about time slots and time running out, maybe we should slowly come to a close. We do have a last slide, and we did not start to cover everything. We could talk about every opportunity, every challenge, but we prepared a summary of challenges and opportunities, and I would ask to put them on the screen. Yes, there they are. My goodness, I need to, oops. Okay, and so I want to wrap up what our panelists thought at most appreciated and most challenging. What they appreciated most was that the course itself became an expression of intercultural interaction where students shared their cultural perspectives and experiences. And you really have a wide range of students that you can bring together and with whom you can work for a certain time until this can really unfold. Another appreciated fact was that the experiencing that learning contents were strongly influenced by various contexts. Right. So, and that was what I think Christian brought up, that what was expected by him and his colleague was slightly different from what the students were interested in. And that, of course, is very interesting because as a professor, you're basically waiting for students to interact and make you change the path that you were on, because that is when learners learn most. And this is something that you get in an intercultural context and very seldom somewhere else. In a super diverse classroom also, if you have students from different backgrounds, like worker students and academics, this can also happen, but it's different. Another advantage was the unfolding transatlantic dialogue and the intensive work students put into the electronic exchange. That is really something many colleagues have been talking about, not only with regard to the intercultural exchange, but also with regard to online teaching as such, because there's much more, especially if it's asynchronous, much more written text produced, which often is very challenging, also very challenging to assess because it takes a lot of time, but it's also very revealing and worthwhile. And I'm sure the students will remember this course much more than they remember other courses. Finally, to observe how students from Europe and Asia interact, debate, and share views on contemporary political and economic affairs that are relevant to all. And there again is this idea of what binds us together. Most challenging was, and maybe we finished, and I think every one of you added one of the challenges. So why don't everyone grab the challenge that it listed and then comment and make this the final comment for the session? So who came up with this first challenge? I don't see everyone here.
Yeah, I think it was me. Yeah, so what is really challenging, I think, which is not so much on the level of the course itself, but on the institutional level, to coordinate the attendance of the students from various international universities. And this is the last point is something else. It refers to something I mentioned before. To encourage the students to participate actively in the video conferences, that was a phenomena. I noticed this semester when I was talking in the seminar, in the video session, and so many students did not participate actively, so they switched off their camera and their audio, and it was challenging to know what they were doing and to activate them. So on the one hand, the institutional aspect, so who can attend the course, how do they attend the course, what kind of exams do they make, or how do the participation is credited by credit points. So these are challenging aspects.
Right. I think we have to go a little faster here. So whose was the bringing together?
I agree completely on that. And I may add two aspects: that different levels of competence within the students group was a huge challenge for teaching because they brought various different perspectives in level of competence and knowledge. And on the other hand, we had some evangelical students. The hermeneutical challenge was very hard to cope with, that they started with the historicity of the Bible on some side, and you have to discuss from Adam and Eve, so to say. And that was really hard. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I will be very brief on the third here. Just to mention that if I'd known that the learning outcome, that the work that students put into the course was so rich, I probably would not have planned out the second half and even the first part, like with my own materials, so extensively. So leave room, leave us, enough space for things to unfold, because they will. And then grading the digital portfolios also because of the different types of things students produce, the website versus PDFs, etc. But one has to be flexible and just still see, the line of argumentation and some kind of revelatory moments in that kind of script that we're receiving from this personal exchange.
Sebastian?
Yeah, finally, the technical aspects, that is essentially a fast internet connection is needed. And that is not always the case. We all have made that experience this semester, and it applies to intercontinental, transnational virtual space endeavors as well.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for listening, and thank you, University of Deusto, for organizing this session. I hope we've brought you some insights, and I hope you're going to join the next session tomorrow about citizen science. Bye-bye.
Bye. Many thanks, Dr. Cornelia, and to our four distinguished panelists for such an interesting session related to these best practice virtual exchange projects and the active discussion, answering the questions. Also, we would like to thank to all the attendees and to the organization team. And as Cornelia said, see you tomorrow for the third and fourth sessions within this Higher Education Institution Summer Forum. The Civic University by University College Cork, and the vast university system, a local response to a global challenge by University of Deusto at